While Yanagi is an amazing character, she is a little bit new and confusing, a lot of new mechanics of new disorders, switchblade kind of style. Let's make her team compositions at least a breeze for us to understand, and if you're interested in more Yanagi content, we will have more of it on the channel as well. First things first, what does she play into? What teams does she form good in? The main thing what Yanagi does that makes her very different from a lot of the other anomaly characters is she has a special disorder. Unlike the others who require different elements to proc disorder, Yanagi procs it even with the base shock. She can still disorder onto a shock, which is very, very incredible. And that is why the first team that I want to talk about is playing into her special kit strength, which is shock teams in the game. Shock teams basically is revolving around proccing electric anomaly, and then Yanagi feeding off on top of that electric anomaly to proc her special disorders, which do a little bit less than the normal disorder, but she procs it a lot without her EX special attack and whatnot as well. Who performs best in this team composition? And normally anomaly characters don't play into like mono teams, so this is just like Yanagi specific and special, what makes her like very, very unique. The best electric buffer in the game. Finally, we actually have a use for Rina. We talked about it a little bit earlier of why Rina is really fantastic and her day to shine will eventually come. But Rina probably is one of them that works really, really well with Yanagi. She extends the duration of shock, which allows you to hit more of the enemies more times with shock so that she can proc her disorder abilities a little bit more for Yanagi. Rina is excellent unit for that as well. She gives you rest pen, which Yanagi doesn't mind, likes it as well. But I understand, of course, at this point, some of you might be thinking, EOD, but I do not have this standard character. I got unlucky and I pulled like I don't know, some XX other character in the game. Not to worry, there are many other options, but Rina probably is the best in slot for a shock specific team. The other options in the game, for the last slot of if you are just trying to form like a mono electric team, you have a lot of options. Grace is if you are planning to run like a double anomaly here. She doesn't really cannibalize with Yanagi because Yanagi is mostly focused on that special disorder that she procs. So Grace is okay as well, but there are so many options that you can play. You can go for stun characters, for example like Anbi, like Ting-Yi, to help you proc even more damage on the enemies if you're looking for a little bit more stun as well. In that case, you're probably going to be playing Yanagi as like more of an on-field DPS, more of like your main DPS of the comp if you're running stun in the last slot, and Rina over here. If you're running a DPS like Anton, then Yanagi kind of becomes like your secondary DPS because she does require and want a bit of energy if she wants to proc her disorders. So staying off field, getting a bit of energy and whatever not over time slowly is also decent, but she can also of course be played on field as well. Similarly, Anton has his own power spikes. He wants to use his EX special attack, so you can rotate between two of them when one of them is on cooldown. It's decent as well, but the last one that I want to talk about is, of course, Seth. Seth is really strong, gives you a lot of protection, gives you buffing as well for anomaly characters, which Yanagi loves as well and scales off with. So Seth is another good example. If you do not have Rina in this slot, I think you can easily move a buffer kind of unit in the pair slot. For example, you can play maybe Seth in this slot, you can play like Ting-Yi, something that adds damage in the second slot. And then your last slot is really just rounding up your team of what you're looking for and filling up your team compositions. That is for a mono shock team, which I think a few people might be playing, especially if the floor is like super weak to electric. You likely will see the rise of electric teams as well with a main DPS Yanagi for at least a little bit. We'll talk about hyper carry Yanagi in a moment as well, but let's go on to probably her most popular team, which is the double anomaly team composition. Why is double anomaly so good is because currently we have this character in the game, Bernice. She is a bit expensive, but I will tell you some other options. Not every one of us have this character, but let's talk about why these two work really well together and the essence of these two so that we can elaborate more on it. One character, Bernice, takes up very little field time. She doesn't even care a lot about field time. She just applies a burn, she works off field so you can have other characters helping you proc that anomaly. At the same time, for whatever reason, Rina was good because of extension of shock. Bernice does that as well. She extends burn duration, so your anomaly lasts longer, allowing you to potentially trigger more of the special disorder for Yanagi as well, which is really, really very fantastic too. Some other options in the second slot that you have is other characters. If you do not have like Bernice, you can run with other characters like Piper is also decent. You can run with Jane Doe. Some people say that Jane Doe as well as Yanagi are competitive on field, but I do not think exactly so. Jane Doe generally wants to play as much as she can on field, but Yanagi does work well in bursts. So the moment you play with Jane Doe on field, the moment you proc after you have that disorder buff onto Yanagi provides disorder buff, and maybe she starts with a shock, you go into Jane Doe procs that massive disorder damage as well. Then you swap back into Yanagi to continue doing her combos to proc her special disorder. They can share the field, but of course a character like Bernice will be a lot more suitable because of the less field time she takes. Piper is very similar to Jane Doe in that sense, where she does require a little bit more field time than Bernice, but they still work really well to have a lot of disorder damage. We'll have more videos coming up on the channel as well. We are testing them live as we speak. There are quite a bit of changes that have gone so far, I think. But third slot over here, let's talk about the pivot. You have the first category, which is your defensive characters in your double anomaly team. This is not very unfamiliar. For those of you who are Jane Doe mains and you have been following Jane Doe content for a while, you'll know that Seth as well as Caesar are both excellent for anomaly characters. These are probably best in slot if you're looking for a defensive / buffing character for your team. Seth is the 4-star A rank equivalent. Caesar is the more expensive option, and all limited, so it's super expensive, but I'll give you more options as we go along. These characters buff your damage, they help you protect you, then they offer you a little bit of stun as well sometimes if you build them correctly too. The other option, if you don't really care too much about defensiveness, you can go for a more offense nature. Lucy as well as Rina, these two are very excellent units. Lucy works great with Bernice as well. Rina works much better together with Yanagi than buffing specifically Bernice, but overall buffers really, really fantastic too. Their buffs, Lucy's buffs last an extremely long period of time. Rina's buff lasts a little bit shorter, but at the same time, most of your combo from Yanagi likely is going to be a very, very quick burst window that she does when you expend all of her energy and offload everything. The last character of this section over here will probably be Ting Yi. She buffs a lot of damage as well. So if you're looking for a bit more stun character, I think Ting Yi is probably going to be good. For more lighter information, we'll talk about it a little bit later on once more information is officially released and confirmed. But this is probably going to be one of the most popular teams for Yanagi so far, the first two teams. At the same time, let's talk about the next team composition, which I think will grow in popularity over time, and that is a triple anomaly team. Though we are not all going to be talking about anomaly, we will have more comms for you guys as well. That I think is really interesting, especially hyper carry. But let's talk a bit about triple anomaly first. Triple anomaly, in this team composition, Yanagi is really replacing what used to be Grace in our previous video on Bernice, Grace as well as Jane Doe, where you have 3 different elements. In this case, Yanagi not only procs shock, but she doesn't really care whether shock has been proc or not. She still procs disorder on her own, even though she does take up a little bit more field time than a character like Grace. She does good amounts of damage. You can rotate between your windows of, Jane Doe is a consistent damage dealer across the board. Bernice is apply, get or fail. Yanagi has good burst windows that she can provide, especially if you want to expand a lot of the energy from your team compositions. This complements very nicely to help push up your DPS a little bit more so that you don't have to rely solely on Jane Doe, or perhaps you don't even have Jane Doe. Maybe you have Piper instead of Jane Doe. This team will also be really, really attractive because you're less reliant on that on-field character. In, for example, a team of Grace, Bernice, and Piper, you're less reliant on Piper. In this case, your Yanagi does a good amount of damage in these team compositions as well. So you have a hybrid DPS. I like this team a lot. I think as we have more and more characters coming out in triple anomaly squad, this team is going to grow in popularity. For now, it is a very expensive Whaley comp because the Grace doesn't really work too well here. You are really looking for multiple different elements so that you can proc disorder as much as you can. Until we have more than that, this is really a super expensive team composition now without too many A ranks. So I will just leave it at that. Something that's more interesting is the hyper carry team composition, and this is really playing Yanagi as a main DPS. Some of us, and a lot of us actually, do not have access to electric right now. Probably if you are playing with Anton for your electric coverage, Yanagi is a great exposure into electric field, maybe an upgrade from Anton as well if you're looking to tackle electric content. You have good buffers. Similarly, you can play Rina, but if you want a cheaper option, you have Lucy, who also gives you very, very long amounts of buffing too. And you have your pivot slot. You can play the defensive units like Caesar, Seth, or you can play stunners, for example, like Ting Yi. These are all really, really strong to help you buff damage. This team, I think, will be really great for anyone who is newer to the game and looking to pick up a DPS. You don't really have Zhu Yuan, you don't really have Ellen, you don't really have Soldier 11, you didn't get lucky to pull her, or you don't have Jane Doe. Yanagi is probably the first entrance to this field. which is interesting for those of you slightly newer. And of course, the super new players who have just joined the game and do not have any limited characters at all, and I assume that you do not have any S rank just for the sake of helping more people build accounts as promised in this video. There's something for every single one of us. 2 free characters you can play straight away with your Yanagi. Slap in Lucy, slap in Anbi. I don't even care whether you have you got lucky in your limited as A ranks when you're pulling for Yanagi. But if you have these characters, Piper and Seth likely will be much better A ranks to put in. But otherwise, you can find yourself good value running with Lucy, Anbi as well. Of course, if you found this video helpful, do like, comment, and subscribe. At this point, I highly recommend you check out these 2 other videos we have on the channel, which I think you might like. And thank you guys again so much for watching. See you in the next video.